Hello everyone, and on behalf of the Deutsche Welle Akademie, thanks very much for coming along to our panel session. It's very much appreciated, and I know that our panel guests are excited to talk about how they're using digital technology to foster freedom of expression and information. My name is Degen. I'm a freelance journalist, and I also work with the DW Akademie on media development projects. Now, for those of you who might not be quite familiar with the work of DW Akademie, it's the International Media Development Division of Deutsche Welle, Germany's international broadcaster. And the focus of DW Akademie is on developing free and transparent media around the world, as well as improving the skills of journalists. Now, recently, the DW Akademie wanted to explore digital projects in countries of the Global South that were making a real impact to improve freedom of expression. And what emerged from this project was the South to South Manifesto, a set of principles to help guide how to use digital technology to foster freedom of expression. We'll talk more about these principles a little later, but first let me introduce to you the three innovators who are working with us. They're 3 of 14 innovators who helped create the South to South Manifesto. We have Dickens Olewe, the founder of African Skycam, that's using drones for journalism work. We have Pinkie from Cambodia, who is the managing editor of the Open Data Initiative, Open Development Cambodia. And we have Alejandra Gutiérrez Valdizán from Guatemala, and she's the editor-in-chief of the investigative website Plaza Publica. Now, if you're tweeting, we are at DW_Akademie and Media Dev, as you can see on our slide, which has gone slightly out of, we might just reset that, is a good hashtag for us. Should we just go back and plug it in again? Okay, so Media Dev is a good hashtag for us to tweet along. Now, here in Berlin at Republica, I think we hear a lot about technology. We hear the word innovation a lot, and we hear about the hopes and aspirations of using the internet and technology to make a better world. But how do you do that? You know, it's a really big question. And I think more specifically for an organization such as DW Akademie, it's coming more to focus on questions on, how do you support the development of freedom of expression? How do you protect the rights of journalists? How do you do more to make information accessible to citizens, especially where freedom of information is challenged or threatened? So we've got 3 great guests to hope give us some insight into that and tell them about their projects which we think are making an impact in their communities and their countries. Dickens, can we start with you? Using drones for journalism, can you give us a snapshot of what you're doing to explore how drones can be used in journalism in Africa and elsewhere as well?
So in 2012, the African News Innovation Challenge was a competition that invited African journalists to submit digital solutions to the challenges African journalists are facing in covering stories. And it just happens that around about that time, we had floods in Kenya. And I observed how Kenyan journalists were covering this story. And I picked up a few things. One which was, I realized that they were hiring local fishermen, to row about, to try and get as close as possible to submerged houses, because they wanted to tell the story about the scale of the disaster. The other thing, I mean, they were risking their lives and expensive equipment. And then the other thing that in this story as well is that when it came to getting the aerial visuals of the story, they would hitch a ride in police helicopters. And that, for me, there was a question of editorial independence. So I pitched African Skycam, which, using civilian drones like the DJI Phantom you can see on the home screen. And it's a low-cost solution as compared to costly helicopters. And as well, it helps us override the challenges of embedded journalism. And, we've done a number of stories. So we've covered floods, we've covered political rallies, and most recently, this is one of our exciting projects. We did this last year in November. And this is a dump site in Nairobi. It's about 1 kilometer square. And what we did with this story is that we went into the area and, got very good visuals of the dump site, but then went even further. We developed a 3D model of the dump site. Now, I always say that my slogan when it comes to drones is old stories, new perspectives. The story of this dump site has been told over the years. It's controversial because the dump site was set up in the 1970s as to solve the whole, trash problem in the city. But the dump site has grown over time. It's now a health hazard. We have people who, there's insecurity problems that are created by that dump site. So what we were doing is that producing the 3D model, we were providing people with a platform where they can have an immersive experience with the story. So, you can actually pretty much fly around the whole dump site and see where the schools are and appreciate why it's a controversial story and something needs to be done about it.
And Dickens African Skycam you're calling it Africa's first drone journalism team.
It is, because we were the first in the space to actually go out there and provide a professional professional use cases, especially when it comes to journalism. And I must add this, that in January this year, the Kenyan government sent out a notice banning the use of drones in the civilian space, and they call, they say that, there was a concern that there could be a threat to national security. So, because I can't operate, and right now I'm a night journalism fellow at Stanford, and what I'm working on at the moment is how to integrate this technology in the civilian space and for it to be used in journalism.
Dickens, thank you. Pinkie, your Open Development Cambodia is working on, it's an open data initiative. Can you just tell us something about the challenges you face in doing that sort of work in a country where internet penetration is still quite low?
Open Development Cambodia was started in 2011. It's an initiative that is probably best explained to you here as an intersection between open data and data journalism. We tell truth and factual information. We aggregate data and information on economic, environmental, and social development topics. And before 2011, in about 2008, we saw booming industry, but at the same time there's social conflicts, there's potential environmental problem. And to try and understand this problem was quite difficult because information are often incomplete or contradicting or considered to be sensitive and therefore, sensitive and controversial and therefore dangerous. People didn't want to be associated with organization or group that are doing dangerous work or controversial work, and then therefore thinking of having access to information in this field might pose a danger to them as well. what we did was like, okay, let's try to divorce advocacy from data and information. Let's try to present information as they are. And let's try to aggregate all these and give people all the references and all the source of where these information are coming from, and to let them make their own judgment about issues. What you see here is an interactive map on our website. We probably digitize about more than 700 documents from government, from NGO, from private sector, from the news media, to create this map that you can see how large-scale industrial, land concession are overlapping with natural protected area, and how it's affecting hydrology, how mining projects are kind of like gathered together in where forest area are. And you can see near Intan Sap, the little blue dots, those are numbers of villages. So you can actually, by mapping census data in relation with these data set, you can tell how many villages are within the boundaries of a concession. So what's happening to their life? And by doing so, we allow people to see issues at a macro level and to track all these issues. With regard to the internet penetration, so about 5 years ago, we have 10% of the population having access to the internet. Now we have about 26, which is very, very good. But that doesn't let us reach out to them as much as we can, because we are an online platform. And therefore, we are reaching out to offline community by partnership with other organizations, other media project. And here we have an example of a project we have conducted with Deutsche Welle Akademie as a partner, funded by GIZ. We worked with 3 other media organizations, NGO media organizations, and then we include a data-driven journalism training where the data that we collected get put into practice, and we train journalists from the mainstream media houses to use this data and to tell the story that the people are experiencing as something that is a challenge for their life. And with these kind of review the study from the journalists and this data, then we went along and conducted radio call-in show and public forums where the duty bearers are brought together to face with the people, and then the media organization facilitate that discussions of why being a farmer is increasingly becoming even more difficult. What are we doing wrong? The data show that we're supposed to get paid this much for our rice, but we only get paid like 30% of that. What else can we do? So then we turn the discussion to not, okay, we are pro this organization or against this organization, but to say, this is how we are experiencing, and this is the data of what it is at a national level. So what is the missing pictures, and what else can we do?
And Open Development Cambodia, I mean, I've heard that you are the first data aggregator in Cambodia and also in the region, no?
We are the first data aggregator of this kind in Cambodia, and I also believe that in the region. We're not the first open data project, we're not the first mapping platform, but it's the first that kind of bring these different data sets, different perspective, and also different kind of information like news, report, data and data visualization together and tell the story in a neutral and journalistic approach. So we're not journalists ourselves, but we use data visualization from data journalism, which is something that's really inspiring for our work. And by doing that, we are actually pioneering in this field back home and also in Southeast Asia.
Thank you. Alejandra, you're in Berlin at a time when back home in Guatemala, there's huge demonstrations on the streets, anti-corruption protests, calling for the resignation of President Molina. Can you tell us just a little bit about the work of Plaza Publica and also what role Plaza Publica, an investigative website, might play, particularly at a critical time like this?
Plaza Publica, its bigger plan is do in-depth journalism and give like bigger explanation of this complicated country that is Guatemala. 36 years of war. Just 18 years ago we signed the peace, so it's a complicated country. And our plan is try to find other ways to see the reality that have been parted in two. We still live in like the Cold War story already. The plan of Plaza Pública is to investigate the relationship between the economical powers and the organized crime and the political powers. So all these stories that are crossing around. And in the case of the protests, it's been like 50 years that the people didn't went out to the streets to protest and say that they are just tired of the system. In this case, it's about the corruption. The corruption have been like the point that everybody agrees, because in other things, everybody thinks different, but corruption is like what people cares about.
It affects everyone.
Exactly, it affects everyone. So the role of Plaza Pública in this case is just, we are not so interested in the breaking news, but we already are covering it, tweeting about it, doing videos, etc. But we do this research, we already did it about these great stories about corruption, and we try to explain to the readers what's going on behind the protesters, the protests, and why is this happening, and what can happen around, like bigger explanations. It's like we did with this coverage that you are seeing in here. It's the genocide trial that happened 2 years ago. So we decided to do the coverage day by day.
This is the aftermath of Guatemala's civil war.
Exactly. It's this General Rios Montt was judged for genocide. So we did that day-by-day coverage, but we also want to say to the people, he's here because he made all these things, because the media in these times didn't explain all these things and stories and killings. So we start to do research about the past also. So it's this kind of things that we do, being in the present, but explaining all around.
Thank you very much, Alejandra. Can I ask all of you? We're here in Berlin. We're here in a European capital, and it might be an assumption that journalists, media from the global south, from developing countries, look north for inspiration, look north for ideas. Is that still the case with all of you, or are you now turning towards each other, trying to find ideas from each other? Who wants to start?
Can I take
Dickens?
that? Okay. I think there's definitely, we are definitely looking at each other's countries. If you look at our political situation, is that we are either emerging from an autocratic system, or we have a pseudo-democracy, and by and large we usually have governments in place which are not very friendly to the media. And it is really interesting for us to look at each other and see how we actually navigating this really, really tough environment. How we are using innovation, and that innovation is not necessarily, it could be the most simplest of things, of how one media house or media organization is using SMS. And I remember a project that really sticks, since we had the get-together in Cape Town last year, was a project in India where they were using an IVR system in a country, which I found that really interesting, that in India, a country, a big democracy, only has like one radio station. And what the journalist from India was doing was he was using the IVR system to pretty much do some sort of citizen journalism. So citizens obviously
using mobile phones.
Using mobile phones to pretty much have a radio system where people can contribute stories and also listen to stories. And it's just a question of how can we also replicate or scale that system in our environments and navigate the kind of legal situation that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, that's a nice workaround in India where, if you're not aware, All India Radio, the state broadcaster, really has the monopoly on radio news. There are plenty of community radio stations, but broadcasting news is still something which they're not allowed to do. Alejandra.
Yeah. First of all, we don't think that the world is parted in north and south. We don't feel that we are south, or it's upper countries or lower countries. We see that I'm talking from Latin America, not just Guatemala is Central American, in fact. So we think more in regions, and we see like the north countries just like things to see and for information, but what really inspires us is the sharing of Latin America, especially the example of people that is living similar situations, that have the same challenges. So for us, it's more inspiring to see what great and magnificent journalists are doing around. So this is for us, or at least in Plaza Pública.
Okay, and there's more of a trend for a movement of investigative websites or organizations in Latin America to start working together, no?
Yeah, it's like it's emerging like a lot of digital, especially digital spaces in Latin America, and we also share the media property, concentration of the media property, so it's this huge traditional media, and the digital are starting to do like different work, doing in-depth journalists, and the thing that we trust in the same. So we are creating like great alliances between sharing information, and so I think this is so positive for the region and for the citizenship.
Okay, but definitely not a north-south divide in your eyes.
Not really. We have some influence. We don't have it. We can't have it. But it's more like that dialogue and the debate, I think, is more around Latin America.
And Pinkie, for you in Cambodia?
I think in our experience, it's more of like how do we approach this within our own timeline. When we first started in 2011, we didn't know that there's something called open data. We just thought that there's all of these scanned document and publication from the government that people don't really have access to, but they're out there. So we spend hundreds of hours digitize these documents and then map it. And then we give them the references because we want to protect ourselves by saying, we're not making this up. This is what you put out in the public, and this is what we make out of it. And then about a year and a half ago, we learned about data journalism, and things kind of come together. So then when we're looking at, okay, what's the best practice for open data, for data visualization, capacity buildings, and things like that, we look to, the global north, kind of say. And then when we look at, okay, how do we deal with our own challenges? Because we have defamation law, and we don't have access to information. We have a draft cybercrime law, and the political environment and the sphere that Cambodia is having is similar to some of our country, our neighbors. So how do they deal with these things? And by looking at what they're doing and how they're dealing with this, we're able to learn from them and to adapt our own strategy so that we can be safe, so that we can protect the space for operation like this to still going on and to still happen, to still create values.
Can I ask all of you, Ethan Zuckerman made some interesting points at the beginning of Republica about, and talking about trust in government, or lack of trust in government in media, lots of different institutions. What can we do as media organizations, as journalists, to really support people to be active in society, to be engaged, and to participate?
Okay.
And hopefully using technology, digital tools to achieve that.
In my case, so we have a situation, like I said, where the Kenyan government just banned drones, and we have a professional interest in using this technology. And media freedom is guaranteed in the Constitution. Access to information as well is guaranteed in the Constitution. So we are left with a situation of what do we do? And I think right now I see a great opportunity for us to engage with government. In fact, on the 22nd of April, as part of my John S. Knight Fellowship at Stanford, I worked with the Center for Investigative Reporting and News Labs at Google to organize a conference that brought together drone manufacturers, lawyers, journalists, and academics to discuss the future of drones. I intend to bring this conversation to Africa because I think we have this model, and I think sweeping generalization here, but I think most countries in Africa have this kind of a top-down kind of a model where the government says, we don't like this technology, we don't like this, we are banning them as a threat to national security. So what we are doing is we want to do is to set up a platform where we bring them to the table. They can tell us what their concerns are. We can sell to them what our interest in, because if they ban the innovation, I think it's, the technology, it's killing innovation, I think. So I think more engagement, more honesty, and I think we find ourselves in those kind of situations where, a government is probably not friendly to the media because of some historical events. And I think what we need to do, instead of just standing at the corner and doing nothing and complaining about it, is how can we engage them? How can we approach them? How can we meet them at the point where they'll be willing to engage us? So I think that would be my sort of approach.
Can I ask both of you just some quick remarks on that, because we are pressed for time?
I think the most important thing is information, and good information and complete information. So for us, for Plaza Pública, the deal or the objective is just to inform. So the protests are not going to be like anger protests, are going to be intelligent protests, and to generate debate, I think, is so healthy also. So I would say that, information.
For us, it would be in the domain of access to information is to, I believe in the strength in number, and therefore by establishing good practices and standards, something that everyone who's involved with and participate in the process understand, and there's a transparency in what we're doing. And then by using technology to show people that, in Cambodia at least, it is okay to ask questions. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to want to see what's happening with our budget.
Information is not dangerous?
Well, it
treated
has,
with caution, but can be used for good.
Yeah, it can be used for good, and previously, because of how the government have used media and information as propaganda to try and make people think in a certain way, and also there's a stigma or there's kind of a risk that goes with having access to certain information. For example, we're working with forest cover, and people say, "Why you're doing that? You're not supposed to. This is sensitive. The government don't want you to do that, and why do you publish this?" So we still get questions like that, sometimes even from academics. So that is something that we have to overcome first before even thinking about what kind of technology we have to use. But we have to change the people's mindset and their attitude toward having access to information.
Thank you very much. Just in the remaining couple of minutes that we have, just to let you know about the manifesto which our innovators developed. I'll just show you the website that you can go to. And let me just show you the website. It's not coming back. Yeah, just to go back, thanks. Okay, so academy.dw.de/S2S manifesto. It's in 5 languages, English, Arabic, Spanish, Khmer, and Luganda. It's a set of 7 principles. It's a very in-depth document. There's also a list of recommendations. So it's not just lofty ideals, there's also concrete recommendations which media organizations can really put into action. Thanks very much for your attention. And please, if you've got questions for our panelists afterwards, do grab them. Thank you very much.